Hi everyone, and welcome to our live stream today. We're very lucky to have Bram Cohen with us. Bram has a great many accolades to his name. He's not only the author of the peer-to-peer BitTorrent protocol, but also the first program to use that protocol, BitTorrent. He's the co-founder of CodeCon and the organizer of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh man, that's all old
That's
information
old, is
there.
it? Well, and also
Way old.
the current CEO of the Chia Network. So, hi, Bram, how are you?
No, we haven't. No, the peer-to-peer hackers meetings in the Bay Area haven't happened for like 15 years. It's
Oh,
like,
no, I'll information yourself. Okay. Um,
yeah.
but you're currently the CEO of the Chia Network. That's correct.
Okay. So technically speaking, I'm no longer CEO. But I am. My business cards say I'm the big Kahuna.
Okay, all right. Beginners of Chia Network. Well, before I get you to introduce yourself and obviously update us with what you're doing at the moment, I'd just like to quickly thank our sponsors for this stream today.
Keep us in line. We build the strongest mining company in the world. Tell us that it's impossible to earn money in honest ways. We have made a clear system where you can check every single Bitcoin exchange. Consider our solutions easy. We will invest 100% of your stock to buy equipment. Question the reliability of mining investment. We are ready to buy your share at any moment. Take our equipment. We are building mining farms all over the world and have an insurance fund. That way sudden losses won't affect our incomes. Think you decide nothing? We are building an active community where every opinion matters. Take your part in leading it by speaking up and giving your vote. Debate with us. We don't have offshores. Our public contract can be changed only if you wanted to. Criticize us. We have the cheapest equipment on the market, and the daily fee would cost you 14 cents US dollars terahash per second. Try to find an alternative. You'll be surprised. There is none.
So, Bram, it's probably best if I hand it over to you, and just so you can give our viewers more of an up-to-date snapshot of what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah. So so I'm mostly known for creating BitTorrent, which was started that a long time ago. I actually invented the BitTorrent protocol myself and did the initial implementation. Um, I left there in summer of 2017, and since then I've been working on Chia, which is a new cryptocurrency project. We're going to make a cryptocurrency called Chia, and the goal of this is to be a better Bitcoin, as in a straightforward improvement on Bitcoin based on known things.
Mm-hmm. Great. We'll certainly get on to questions about the Chia in a bit. If we can start with our first question, I'm sure many of those watching will have heard of BitTorrent and probably used BitTorrent at some stage.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give our viewers, if they haven't heard about it, just a quick explanation of what BitTorrent is?
Oh boy, man, you're taking questions that I had to answer like 20 years ago.
Yeah, sure.
The So BitTorrent is a file distribution protocol. The idea is that instead of everyone downloading something directly from a website, people just get some information about what the file looks like from a website and then connect to each other and send pieces to it, kind of trade pieces of it with each
Mhm.
other. This works really well. And it's been a significant fraction of all internet traffic for a very long time now.
Absolutely. Um, Great. Well, I think I'm going to switch the questions around. If we get actually straight on to what Chia is about. So you say it's a complete improvement upon the Bitcoin protocol.
Yeah.
Could you give us some ideas with how Chia is aiming to achieve that?
Okay, so I'm always I'm never quite sure what level to give answers at here because
Sure.
there's
If we start with a basic look, and
yeah.
then we can obviously get into more.
So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, which makes it so that it's truly distributed, that everyone who's currently working on it can just leave and a whole new set of people can come in, and everyone still has high confidence that the Bitcoin that they're holding on to won't just evaporate in the process. That if you have Bitcoin, you really have Bitcoin, and no one else is just printing Bitcoin for nothing, and your Bitcoin isn't just going to disappear. This is the feature that Bitcoin offers, and it does it without a trusted third party. Obviously, this is a trivial thing to do with a trusted third party, but Bitcoin does it without a trusted third party. There are two, broad categories of improvement that I'm working on. One of them is on the consensus algorithm. So Bitcoin, due to an unfortunate fact of the nature of math and physics in the universe, has to burn a huge amount of electricity doing nothing at all. This is called the mining process. The reason for this is the thing that Bitcoin does is a very hard thing to do, and there needs to be something making it so that people actually achieve consensus and don't get to this he said, she said, more people claim, blah, 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 blah kind of stuff, which would make it so someone could just overwhelm the network with sybils who are lying, and then they just say that the database is whatever they want to say it is. Yeah. So in order to stop this from happening and not rely on a trusted third party or a sort of vaguely distributed set of trusted third parties, which is really what proof of stake is. There's this big core idea in Bitcoin, which is it actually takes computational power to create the history, to create the blockchain. And if you and I get into an argument about what the current state of everything is, we compare the weights of our histories, and whichever one has a greater weight wins. Now, the vast majority of the time, when one of them has a greater weight, it's really just another block was added to the end. One of them has a strictly longer history than the other, and we don't really have much of a complaint. But this algorithm can make it so even in cases where there were big deviations, they get settled very quickly. And there's this interesting set of how the ecosystem as a whole work. You have miners and full nodes and wallets. And there's those interactions between all of those, which enable the system as a whole to function reasonably. And that was the big innovation behind Bitcoin in the first place. So this does work, but the Bitcoin mining industry really burns a lot of electricity. Like ridiculous amounts. And it's hard for people to wrap their brains around just how ridiculous this is. When you have a Bitcoin mining operation, it looks like something industrial. It's a warehouse full of computers that are burning electricity. And there's this question of what they're doing. And the answer is nothing. They're not doing anything. They are, obviously something happens here, but what they're doing is printing lottery tickets. Checking the lottery tickets and throwing them away. vast majority of the time, like an hour will go by where none of the lottery tickets were winning, and then one of them prints a golden ticket, and then they get the mining rewards for that block, and then everything continues. This is ridiculous. And on top of being just gross and wasteful, this also leads in the ecosystem to a fair amount of centralization. That some people have, there's centralization around who's manufacturing the custom hardware people are mining with. And then there's and then there's centralization around who has the cheapest sources of electricity.
Yeah.
And whoever has the cheapest source of electricity is able to mine more effectively than other people, and winds up taking over. So Bitcoin mining is actually fairly centralized. There's a handful of large players that are doing most of the Bitcoin mining, which is counter to how the system is really supposed to work.
Sure.
So in order to fix this, we're switching to proof of space. So the idea here is there's a lot of hard drive space in the world that people have. People have a hard drive. It's not full yet. This is like $100 billion a year industry of storage. Some large fraction of that is unused at any given moment.
Yeah.
The idea is that people can take the unused storage capacity that they have and farm off of that. We're calling it farming instead of mining. Farm your chia. It's named after the grain. Yes. So you and this is a process that doesn't consume much electricity.
Sure.
So there's hardly any marginal cost to it. So the idea is to make it so that everybody, all kinds of people out there, just take, hey, gravy money, and start farming with their spare hard drive capacity. So there's no real waste happening here in the farming process. Now, technically there is waste, but you're leveraging waste that was already happening in inefficiencies of storage allocation. And this is less wasteful and also much more distributed, both because it's already very distributed and because even in the case where we totally fail to be less wasteful and mostly people farm by buying hard drives, which I don't think is going to happen. But even in that case, if the work difficulty goes up, it's not like it suddenly becomes unprofitable to keep farming because it's all amortized costs that you have. So in Bitcoin, when the hash rate goes up, people start dropping off. And if you're doing proofs of space, people aren't going to start dropping off. They're just going to not get as many returns as they were hoping to, but they're going to keep farming. So it's inherently much more distributed. That's I'm not the first person to come up with this idea of using proofs of space. It's a very hard problem just on a purely technical level to get it to work right. There's all kinds of issues around it because you've made it not cost anything to farm, and that's a feature, right? But it's also a problem because now there are all these types of attacks where someone can just farm over and over and over again and try and gain advantage from doing that. And it's a very interesting and difficult problem, stopping that from happening. Although we've got it worked out. We've figured out the necessary tricks to make that happen. Had to figure out some new math to do that. The other broad type of feature that we're doing is we're making it be a better platform for smart transactions. And here there's this like really massive split in ideas of what kind of smart transactions you want to support between what I'm going after and what things like Ethereum are going after. In Ethereum, things are written in basically JavaScript, and you have a distributed app, which in some sense isn't very distributed at all. It's running on the blockchain, but it's like one app, and everyone is subject to just what this one app decides to do. And those are actually usually called smart contracts in that context. Like smart transaction and smart context are technically synonyms, but it's like a very different approach to the thing, where what I'm going after, and they're going after like, I don't know, games and who knows what, like very complicated chunks of logic there. And what I'm going after are very narrowly focused on money-based use cases and just being able to transfer value around reasonably. Bitcoin as a technology for transferring funds has a fair number of things going for it. But it also has a lot of problems. It feels an awful lot like carrying around suitcases full of $100 bills. Which is not what you want to have happen. So what you want is to have smart transactions where these are things there's not a single monolithic thing running on the blockchain. Everyone has control of their own little transactions that they're just doing themselves.
Yeah.
And the kinds of features people want out of that are like net settlement and being able to move the fund instantaneously instead of having to wait a few minutes for blocks to come out, and having custody arrangements so that I have my keying material, but then if I lose my keying material, I can get it back again via some formula using other parties.
Right.
So like 2 out of these 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
And being able to have velocity control, so I can, move funds, but if I try and move them at more than a certain rate, they kind of get escrowed for a bit, and then I can call them back with this other key that I keep in cold storage, like in my safe deposit box. So if I get hacked, I can notice, oh, somebody's trying to move all my funds, and then I go get my other key and pull it back again. These are the kinds of features that I'm focused on trying to build, trying to support at least. And in terms of what it looks like as a language, GiaScript, the drafts of it that we have now are like a very, very simplified Lisp.
Yeah.
And the real focus is not on ease of development. It's on everything on programs being succinct and extremely simple to interpret and auditable in their behaviors, which is really what you want for something that's taking care of money. And we're using Lisp specifically instead of Forth. Bitcoin script is Forth based. We're doing it Lisp based because I'm getting a little into the weeds here, because you want sandboxing in scripts, and Lisp is by default basically completely sandboxed, and Forth, because it has a stack that anything you call can manipulate at will, is the opposite of sandboxed. So that's kind of this high level overview of what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, fantastic. It sounds very exciting, actually. We're going to, there's definitely more of the nitty-gritty we'd like to get into with that. And before we do, we're trialing our first free to premium content switch at the moment. Because when we have such fantastic guests with knowledge, such a breadth of knowledge, we think it's so valuable that people enjoy that. So we'll get onto our questions in just a couple of minutes. So while our team switch the stream over, so if we can just hold tight while Victor and everyone do that, and then we're going to have a look at a few more questions. So just if you bear with us for a second.